What if I told you that every thought you think is not merely a fleeting spark in the mind, but a seed cast into the vast soil of the unseen world? Some seeds blossom into radiant gardens of peace, love, and clarity. Others, however, take root in shadow, growing into thorns that entangle the soul, distort perception, and silently drain life's vitality. The danger is that we rarely notice these thorns until they have already coiled themselves around our spirit. Negative thoughts, resentments, fears, jealousies, doubts may seem harmless in the moment. A passing irritation at a stranger, a quiet resentment toward a friend, a hidden fear about the future. Yet in the language of the soul, there is no such thing as just a thought. Thoughts are currents of energy. They radiate, they attract, they shape the invisible patterns of our destiny. Ancient sages warned of this truth long before psychology gave it a name. They spoke of the mind as a sacred temple where every whisper of the heart had the power to call forth angels or summon demons. A single poisonous idea, if left unchecked, can spiral into despair, corrosion of spirit, and even illness of the body. Negative thinking is not simply a mental inconvenience, it is a spiritual hazard. In this video, we will journey into the hidden dimensions of thought. We will explore why negative thoughts are far more dangerous than they appear. How ancient wisdom traditions, from the Vedic scriptures of India to the mystical teachings of the Desert Fathers, understood this invisible battle, and what modern seekers can do to protect themselves. We will uncover the esoteric roots of thought as creative force, how negativity creates subtle energetic chains that bind the soul, why unchecked patterns of fear and anger open hidden doors to suffering, and most importantly, how you can reclaim the sovereignty of your mind and transform darkness into light. Prepare yourself. This is not simply a lecture on positive thinking. This is an unveiling of a spiritual law, an ancient secret that the mind you cultivate becomes the world you live in. Across the corridors of history, every great spiritual tradition has spoken in hushed tones about the hidden power of thought. Long before neuroscience confirmed that repeated thinking reshapes the brain, mystics and philosophers understood that our inner dialogue shapes the destiny of the soul. To them, thoughts were not vapor but substance, living vibrations echoing in the unseen. In the Vedic scriptures of India, the mind was described as a restless charioteer, pulling the soul in whatever direction it pleases. The Bhagavad Gita warns, "For the man who has conquered his mind, the mind is the best of friends, but for one who has failed to do so, the mind will remain the greatest enemy." Here we see the recognition that negative thoughts left unbridled are not neutral. They are adversaries that quietly erode one's inner strength. The Buddha took this even further, declaring that all that we are is the result of what we have thought. In Buddhist philosophy, the seeds of craving, aversion, and ignorance are considered the roots of suffering. Each negative thought is like a drop of ink in a clear vessel of water. On its own, small and almost imperceptible, but repeated daily, it darkens the entire vessel of consciousness. In the Christian mystical tradition, the Desert Fathers, those solitary seekers who fled into the wilderness in the 3rd and 4th centuries, spoke of logismoi, the demonic thought seeds that attacked the mind. They taught that these were not mere imaginings but spiritual invasions: envy, lust, pride, anger. To indulge them even briefly was to open a door to spiritual corruption. In their silence and prayer, they discovered that the battle for the soul was fought not in the outer deserts but in the inner desert of the mind. Meanwhile, in Taoist philosophy, thoughts are viewed as currents of qi, the life force. Negative thoughts, especially those of anger and fear, are said to disrupt the harmony of energy within the body, creating blockages that manifest as illness. The Taoists urged balance, inner stillness, and alignment with the natural flow of existence as the antidote. Even the ancient Stoics, who were less mystical and more rational, saw the danger in letting the mind dwell on destructive thoughts. Marcus Aurelius, the philosopher king, warned himself daily in his meditations. The things you think about determine the quality of your mind. Your soul takes on the color of your thoughts. For him, negative thinking was not simply a weakness but a distortion of reality, a betrayal of one's higher reason. When viewed together, these traditions point to a profound, universal truth. Negative thoughts are not private, harmless whispers in the brain. They are energetic forces, shaping the quality of the soul, the body, and even the fate of one's life. To the mystic, thoughts are offerings upon the altar of the spirit. To the philosopher, they are the architects of destiny. And to the healer, they are the very currents of health or disease. This convergence of wisdom reveals why the subject of negative thinking cannot be dismissed as mere psychology. It is a spiritual matter, a cosmic law that transcends culture and time. Whether spoken in Sanskrit, Greek, Latin, or Chinese, the message is the same. To indulge in destructive thoughts is to play with fire in the invisible realms. And yet, the question remains, why are negative thoughts so potent? What hidden mechanics give them such power over the soul? To answer that, we must journey deeper into the esoteric science of the mind itself. To understand the spiritual danger of negative thoughts, we must first uncover their hidden mechanics. On the surface, a thought seems harmless, an image, a word, a fleeting spark in the brain. But in the unseen dimension, thoughts are not inert. They are forces, streams of energy that vibrate beyond the mind and shape the subtle fields around us. Imagine casting a stone into a still pond. The ripples spread outward, touching every corner of the water's surface. In the same way, every thought sends ripples into the ocean of consciousness. Positive thoughts create harmonizing waves that calm the waters of the soul. Negative thoughts, however, disturb the surface, creating turbulence that eventually returns to its source. The pond is your being, and every ripple comes back to you. From an esoteric perspective, thoughts function much like seeds. Each thought you hold is planted in the soil of your subconscious. A single angry thought may pass unnoticed, but when anger is repeated day after day, it takes root. Over time, it grows into a tree with branches of resentment, fruits of bitterness, and roots that choke the spirit. What began as a passing irritation becomes a habit, then a character trait, and finally a destiny. This is why mystics say, guard the gates of the mind as you would guard a sacred temple. If thieves and vandals are allowed to enter unchecked, they will desecrate what is holy. Negative thoughts are such intruders. At first, they may appear small. Envy disguised as self-comparison, doubt masquerading as caution, fear presenting itself as wisdom. But once welcomed, they multiply, until the temple is filled not with light but with shadows. The spiritual danger is not only that negative thoughts grow stronger the more we indulge them. It is that they subtly shift our vibration, attracting experiences and energies of a similar frequency. Fear attracts more reasons to fear. Anger magnetizes more conflicts. Despair opens the door to heavier, denser currents of energy. This is not superstition, it is resonance. Just as a tuning fork vibrates when struck by a note of the same pitch, so too does the soul attract circumstances that echo its dominant thoughts. To make this clearer, consider a simple metaphor. The mind is like a radio transmitter. Whatever signal you broadcast, the universe responds with echoes. If you continually broadcast resentment, the world seems to mirror back situations that fuel your bitterness. If you transmit gratitude, opportunities for joy mysteriously appear. Negative thoughts, therefore, are not only self-destructive, they tune us into a channel of reality where suffering is the dominant program. And there is yet another danger, more subtle and more insidious. Every negative thought, if entertained long enough, begins to weave an identity. The one who occasionally feels fear becomes the fearful person. The one who frequently thinks of resentment becomes the resentful person. Over time, thoughts crystallize into personality, and personality solidifies into fate. This is the hidden alchemy of the mind. Thoughts condense into emotions, emotions harden into habits, habits shape character, and character writes the story of our lives. To leave negative thoughts unchecked is to surrender authorship of your destiny to the darkest whispers of the mind. So when sages warned of negative thinking, they were not issuing mere moral advice. They were describing a spiritual physics, a law as real and immutable as gravity. To feed on dark thoughts is to poison the wellspring of your being, and eventually to drink from that poisoned well. If the first danger of negative thoughts lies in their power to grow and entangle the soul, the second lies in their ability to distort perception itself. Consider this: the world you see is not the world as it truly is, but the world is filtered through your mind. Thoughts are the lenses through which you interpret reality. A clear lens reveals the world in balance and beauty. A cracked lens distorts, warps, and darkens everything you behold. Negative thoughts are those cracks, subtle fractures in perception that gradually create an entirely different reality. For example, a person who constantly entertains thoughts of distrust begins to see betrayal where none exists. One who rehearses fear imagines dangers in every shadow. In this way, negative thinking becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. You do not merely perceive life through darkness, you begin to create darkness around you. Mystics describe this as thought forms. In esoteric philosophy, every thought produces a form in the subtle realms, an energetic echo that hovers in the aura. Positive thought forms are luminous and life-giving, while negative thought forms are heavy, parasitic, and draining. When negative thoughts are repeated, these thought forms accumulate, surrounding a person like a storm cloud. Sensitive individuals can even feel this weight when they enter a room. Some places radiate warmth and clarity, others feel stifling and suffocating. These atmospheres are nothing but the accumulation of thought. But there is an even deeper danger. Negative thoughts can become gateways. In many traditions, it is said that the human mind is not a closed system, but a doorway between worlds. Each thought is like a key, opening or closing unseen doors. When one dwells excessively on fear, hatred, or despair, one opens the gates to heavier energies, entities, and influences that thrive on such vibrations. This is why the Desert Fathers spoke of demonic logismoi, why Buddhist texts warn of mental defilements, and why shamans caution against feeding the dark spirits with fear. From this perspective, negative thoughts are not just personal, they are participatory. They plug the mind into larger fields of collective negativity. When you dwell in anger, you tap into the current of human anger. When you indulge in despair, you connect with the great river of despair flowing through humanity. The danger is not only what is born within you, but also what you magnetize from the greater unconscious of the world. And yet, the subtle genius of the mind is that it can disguise these dangers. A negative thought rarely presents itself honestly. It comes cloaked as practicality, as realism, as caution. The voice of fear says, "I am just protecting you." The voice of envy whispers, "I only want what is fair." The voice of doubt murmurs, "I am keeping you grounded." This camouflage makes negative thoughts especially perilous, for we often welcome them as friends while they slowly corrode us from within. Finally, let us remember, the soul was not designed for darkness. When negative thoughts dominate, they are like smoke filling a house meant to hold light. The air becomes suffocating, and the true inhabitant, the higher self, cannot breathe freely. This is why people consumed by negativity often feel depleted, restless, or ill without understanding why. It is not life itself that is draining them, it is their own mind, poisoning the very atmosphere in which their spirit lives. In some, the spiritual danger of negative thoughts lies not only in their ability to grow unchecked, but also in their power to warp our perception of reality, generate destructive thought forms that weigh upon the aura, open gateways to denser, darker currents of energy, and disguise themselves as reasonable voices while eroding the soul. Understanding this, we see why every tradition, from east to west, from mystic to philosopher, treats mastery of thought as the very foundation of spiritual life. For until one conquers the battlefield of the mind, no higher wisdom can truly take root. Now that we have unveiled the hidden mechanics of negative thoughts, the question becomes, what can we do about it? Knowledge without practice is like a lamp without oil. It shines briefly and then fades. The ancient masters did not merely warn us of the dangers. They offered methods, disciplines, and inner technologies to transform the mind from a prison into a sanctuary. The first step is awareness. Negative thoughts often move like shadows in the periphery of consciousness. They pass so quickly that we hardly notice them, yet they leave their mark. The practice is simple but profound. Become the watcher of your thoughts. Do not wrestle them. Do not fear them. Observe them. Like clouds drifting across the sky, let them appear and pass without attachment. In this awareness, you begin to loosen their grip. The Desert Fathers called this nepsis, or watchfulness, the art of guarding the gates of the mind. The second step is disruption. When you notice a negative thought repeating itself, fear, resentment, self-doubt, intervene. Break the pattern. Some traditions recommend using a sacred word or mantra, a short phrase that instantly redirects the current of the mind. In Christian mysticism, this might be the Jesus prayer. In Hindu practice, a bija mantra like Om or Ram. Even in secular terms, a simple affirmation such as "I release this thought" can act as a sword cutting through the knot. The key is consistency. Interrupt the chain before it becomes a noose. The third step is transmutation. It is not enough to push away negative thoughts. They must be transformed. Imagine receiving a poisonous seed. If you simply discard it, the soil may still remain barren, but if you transmute it, you turn poison into medicine. How? By consciously planting its opposite. Fear can be answered with trust, anger with compassion, doubt with faith. Every negative thought carries within it the seed of its antidote. By practicing this inner alchemy, you not only neutralize darkness but cultivate light. Fourth, cultivate mental diet. Just as the body is shaped by the food we eat, the mind is shaped by the impressions we consume. Ask yourself, what am I feeding my consciousness? The books you read, the conversations you engage in, the media you consume, all of these are seeds entering the soil of your mind. A steady diet of negativity breeds negative thought patterns. A diet of wisdom, beauty, and truth strengthens the spirit. Guard your senses as carefully as you guard your breath. Fifth, anchor yourself in daily practices of light. Meditation, prayer, breathwork, journaling. These are not luxuries but necessities for one who seeks freedom from the tyranny of negative thoughts. In meditation, the mind learns to quiet its turbulence. In prayer, the soul realigns with the higher currents of grace. In breathwork, the body purges the stagnant energies that fuel negativity. These practices act as a daily cleansing, a spiritual hygiene that keeps the temple of the mind clear. And finally, embrace compassion toward yourself. Many seekers fall into despair when they realize the extent of their negative thoughts. They condemn themselves, which ironically deepens the very negativity they wish to escape. Remember, the presence of negative thoughts does not mean failure, it means you are human. The task is not to eradicate every shadow, but to learn how to walk in the light despite them. Progress is measured not by the absence of darkness, but by the speed with which you return to the light when darkness arises. By applying these steps, awareness, disruption, transmutation, diet, daily practice, and self-compassion, you create an inner shield. Negative thoughts may still appear, but they lose their power. Instead of being the master of your fate, they become the raw material through which your spirit grows stronger. In this way, the dangers of negative thoughts are not only neutralized, they are transformed into stepping stones toward awakening. For every shadow resisted, every fear transcended, every anger transformed into love becomes a hidden initiation, a quiet victory in the great inner battle of the soul. We began with a simple idea, that thoughts are not harmless flickers of the brain, but forces that ripple through the unseen. And as we have uncovered, negative thoughts are far more dangerous than most realize. They are seeds that grow into weeds, cracks that distort perception, gateways that open to heavier currents of energy. They shape our character, color our destiny, and determine the quality of our spiritual life. Yet within this truth lies a deeper hope. If thoughts have the power to bind us, they also hold the power to free us. The same force that can summon darkness can also call forth light. The mind is not our enemy. It is our greatest ally if we learn to master it. Remember, you are not your thoughts. You are the witness, the luminous awareness in which all thoughts rise and fall. When negative thoughts appear, they are not proof of your weakness. They are opportunities to practice vigilance, to exercise inner strength, to polish the mirror of the soul. Each time you refuse to identify with them, you reclaim a piece of your sovereignty. The sages of old did not leave us in despair. They gave us tools, awareness, mantra, meditation, compassion, to guard the temple of the mind. These are not abstract ideas, but living practices, ways to ensure that your inner world remains a sanctuary of light in a world filled with noise. So let this truth echo within you. The mind you cultivate becomes the world you live in. Feed it with fear and you will dwell in shadows. Feed it with love and you will live in light. The choice, moment by moment, is always yours. As you leave this video, I invite you to reflect. What thoughts have been shaping your inner world today? Which ones are worth keeping and which ones are only chains disguised as companions? Choose carefully, for the seeds you water today will become the garden of your tomorrow. Guard your thoughts, tend them as you would a sacred fire. For in the silence of your mind lies the blueprint of your destiny and the key to your awakening.